This is a tentative introduction to the notion of pace of perception. And I will read a passage from an interesting essay. Language developed in conjunction with our non-linguistic ways of measuring the world. Language is in one sense no more than the articulation of the non-linguistic ways we measure the world, ways that are difficult to discuss, but nonetheless real. In speaking of the meter of poetry, for example, some critics have hypothesized that it is related to the heartbeat or to the rate of respiration. And while I would not want to be quite that reductive about the nature of measuring, these assertions seem to be on the right track. One could choose to get more complex about the matter, maintaining an essential relationship between meter and the various ultradian and circadian rhythms of life, but that would seem to err too much on the side of over-complexity. The issue is probably much simpler than that. We each have our own distinctive ways of measuring the world, and these ways are no doubt made up of cultural and physiological fields that constantly affect our manner of going about our business in the world. But while it might be nice to know all the factors that are involved in our going forth and our coming hence, the only thing we really need to know is that we do measure in our own particular ways, and that our sense of rhythm saturates us entirely, from the manner in which we use our senses, to the pace of our walking, to the way that we punctuate our sentences. We all have our own meters, if you like, and it is that sense of meter that great writers always remind us of in one way or another. Once again, though, it is necessary to state that we do not have one meter. We do not have one meter. We have various meters, some of which correspond more or less closely, others of which have little to do with one another. Our pace, the manner in which we mark space and time through walking, for example, doubtless has something to do with the pace of punctuation in our sentences, and also something to do with, say, the rapidity with which we size up events or gauge distances. But the measures are not equivalent. They affect each other, to be sure, but there is no sense of equality involved. This is particularly important in that our various ways of measuring the world occur in different fields, and the fields themselves do not all have the same measure, nor do they all change with the same rapidity. They may well be interconnected, as our rhythms necessarily are, but they are indeed different. This also allows our various modes of measure to play off of one another, as each responds to the changes within its particular field, and this increases the flexibility of our position, allowing us to test new measures in different ways to determine their applicability in other fields. We apply these measures to new fields as a matter of course, but the productivity of these transferences is increased to the extent that we are able to bring various measures to form, for given the form, it is much easier to determine the applicability of the measure to other fields. The other important aspect of our measuring that needs to be emphasized is that it is not a passive process. We are not, like Maxwell's demon, carefully sorting atoms into a more orderly state while not expending any energy ourselves. Measuring is an active, participatory process that, put conventionally, means our going out to meet the world, but more appropriately means that our measuring is indeed the mark of our full participation in the fields around us. We may misunderstand our position and think we are autonomous. We may even have as our goal the manipulation of objects for our own ends. But, one way or another, we are probing the world from our location, and everything we do reflects the manner of our measuring the different fields. Measuring is in itself a participatory process, but it is even more participatory as we give form to our measurements, as we allow our forms to develop out of our manner of measuring. This means that, as with all other locations within a field, we affect the rhythms of the field through our measuring of it. This also means that inasmuch as we are the only locations, so far as we know, as we are the only locations that are also aware of the fact that we measure within and through fields, we have a greater responsibility for the way we conduct our affairs. We have responsibility toward the activity within the fields that requires us to be attentive to the way we take up our positions within them, because we have much greater power to affect the activity throughout. We can radically redistribute the flow of a field and impose our own arbitrary structures on it, at least temporarily, if we choose, but we have been participants in the world long enough to know that such radical redistribution of activity negatively affect the rhythms of the field and our own rhythms as well. Once we come to see ourselves as the measurers we are, perhaps we will be more likely to respect the tolerances and the play within a field, and then choose to live within it, rather than choosing constantly to disrupt it. I hope the pronunciation was not too bad.